Hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Geography channel. Once again, my name is Teacher Agre and I want to remind you that this channel is dedicated to helping students taking IGCSE Geography to prepare for their final exams in Paper 1, Paper 2 and in Paper 4. Today is Lesson 2 of our topic Water, and remember this is a Section C topic which almost never misses in the final exams. By the end of this topic, I expect that you will be able to understand the various forms of water scarcity and where each form can be seen in the world. You'll also be able to understand causes of water scarcity. And at the end of the lesson, I will discuss a past paper question, and I will also leave you with a very simple assignment. So let's get started. Global water crisis. Definitely, we said that water is a very important resource in survival of human beings and also in economic development. However, we know that this resource is not readily available in all parts of the world. As you can see, statistics are telling us that over 60% of the world population lives in areas which receive only 25% of annual global precipitation. So that tells us that a very huge percentage, over 74% of the rainfall that we receive happens in places where people are not living. We can have an example of the tropical rainforest. And as we move down, it tells us that up to 40% of the world's land area receive only 2% of the world's annual precipitation, and that is in the arid regions, or what we call the deserts. Let's go ahead and look at the different forms of water scarcity. We have three forms, and number one is economic water scarcity. And what this means is water may be available, but it is inaccessible or it is unusable. This could be because maybe it is very deep in the ground and it's very expensive for people to extract, or it is very costly for people or for the country to transport water from places where it is in plenty to areas where it is needed. Or probably water might be polluted and the government or the people lack the resources to clean it up. Number two is physical water scarcity. And as the name suggests, this is where water is actually not enough for the available population. This is very common in areas that receive very low precipitation, especially in the desert. And then we also have water stress. That is number three. Water stress, this is when the demand for water is more than the supply of water. And that means there is shortage in a particular area. So let's go ahead and look at how different parts of the world suffer from water scarcity. Obviously, there are places that are not having water scarcity, or if it's there, it's very little. We can take a look at places like Canada, USA. Then we look at most parts of Europe, and then Russia in the extreme north, right there. These places are having little or no water scarcity, and this is because they could be having some reliable rainfall, or these countries are rich, as you can see, and therefore they have the technology to be able to either access water from underground, or they can also be able to desalinate ocean water, and therefore they have water in plentiful supply. Next up, we want to look at our countries like Mexico. Let's take a look at much of our South America, much of our Africa, and places like Australia and the Southeast Asia. These places have what we call economic water scarcity, that they do not have the technology or the infrastructure that is needed to store water or to transport water or even to treat water so that it is available for human consumption. And another thing, you find that these are countries or these are parts of continents that have a very rapidly growing population, and therefore there is going to be more demand for water than can be supplied. Okay, Now let's go ahead and look at places that experience what we call physical water scarcity. You can see the ones that are shaded with red right here: South Africa, uh, almost all parts of northern Africa, Middle East countries, and then some parts of Asia. These ones experience what we call physical water scarcity, and what this means is that they actually do not have enough water supply that meets the available demand. And this is as a result of having very, very little precipitation, because as you can see, these are countries that are located in desert places. And another thing, of course, with these countries, they also have an increasing population, and therefore there is going to be no enough water to cover the population. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the causes of water shortage, and we're going to divide these causes into two sections. And one, we're going to be looking at causes related to high demand of water, and the question under there, we're going to be explaining the reasons for the increased demand for water. And then in step two, we will look at the causes related to reduced water supply, and the question right there is going to be explain the factors for reduced water supply. So let's go to the first one: causes related to high demand for water. Number one cause of water shortage is the rapid population growth. As of 2021, the population stands at 7.9 billion people. And from the graph, you can see that in the year 2050, it is expected to have increased to 9.7 billion people. Right here, 2050, and in the year 2100, it will have increased to 10.9 billion people. Now, this kind of population size puts so much pressure on the water resources, and that would increase the shortage for water in the world. Point number two is the increased demand for water for domestic use. So, as the population increases, and especially as people become rich, there's going to be an increasing ownership of electronic machines such as washing machines, dishwashers, and these take so much water, and that would mean that there is more demand for water that can be supplied, and that eventually causes water shortage. These things are especially used so much in the developed countries, and even the developing countries are actually catching up with the technology, and they are demanding for more water in their homes. And of course, we do not have to forget that many houses have swimming pools, many houses have large gardens, so that they need so much water for irrigation. Point number three is the increase in agriculture. That means there is a lot of demand for water for irrigation, and especially with technological advancement, there are machines, for example, the center pivot irrigation system that takes so much water. And when we couple that with the increased population, it means that there is a lot of demand for food each and every day, and therefore agricultural production has to be stepped up. And this is increasing the demand for water, which is bringing in water shortage. Point number four is increase in manufacturing industries. Today, because again, as the population increases, there is high demand for different products, especially steel products, as you can see, and industries of this kind would demand for so much water, especially for cooling machines. Again, water in industries is needed as a raw material, especially for the beverages industries and any other food processing industries. And this leads to higher demand for water, which eventually causes water shortage. Next up, we want to look at the increase in power production, especially production of hydroelectric power. We have thermal electricity and also nuclear energy. As you can see from the pictures right here, this is a nuclear power plant, and it needs a lot of cooling. So much water is diverted into these production plants for cooling the machines, and therefore there's going to be high demand for water as a result of this power production. And also from this dam, you see we have a reservoir back there, and this reservoir provides a larger surface area from which evaporation can take place. And that means so much water is being lost from the reservoir, as we saw this in lesson 1. And also in the process of power production, a lot of water is polluted, and therefore this water might not be available for use. So next up, we want to look at level 2 of the causes, and here we said these points are related with the reduced water supply. Number 1, we're going to look at climate change, and of course the climate change has resulted into melting of ice as a result of global warming, basically the persistent increase in global temperatures. So as the ice melts, this is going to increase the cost of flooding, and that means that as salt water overflows into freshwater bodies like rivers and swamps and lakes near the coastal areas, water become salty, and that means it will not be available for use for home consumption or for any other human uses. Point number 2 is about groundwater depletion, and this means that more water is being taken out of the underground aquifers than is being replaced, and in the end this is going to reduce water supply, and the little water that remains underground might become salty, or what we call salinized, and it will not be available for human consumption. So you can see from the picture there, a well has been established, or pipes have been inserted into the underground aquifers, and water is being drawn. And as you can expect, there's a huge increase in population, and people need water, and therefore more water from underground is being extracted, and yet there is very little rainfall that can recharge this water back into the underground aquifers. Another problem that has caused our limited supply of water is the increase in water pollution. You can see from the picture above here, there's a lot of water pollution in this river, and therefore this water is not safe for human consumption. So that obviously is a shortage in water supply. And then the other thing is, due to population rise, you find that the sewage systems in urban centers do not cope with the population, and therefore you find that sewage is being dumped straight into the water bodies, and this could really cause water not safe for human consumption. Not forgetting the increase in the industries. There's a lot of industrial production around urban centers and different parts of the world. We also have an issue of politics. So River Nile, for example, that flows through 11 countries, has what we call disputes or conflicts on who controls the water. Sudan and Egypt tend to control much of the flow of River Nile, and this has caused shortage of water for other countries that are within the Nile basin. From this article, you see that the Nile waters dispute Egyptians' position. So when you follow the link that I've put on this picture, you will notice that there's a lot of disputes going on between the countries within the Nile basin. Make sure you follow the link and try to read the article under there for more information. The next point is about mismanagement of water bodies or sources of water. A very good example is the ROC, which used to be one of the largest inland water bodies, but it dried up because much of water was taken from its input rivers to grow cotton within the desert. And as you can see from the pictures, the water body that used to be that large, right now it has a very small surface area. You can see this is the only portion of the ROC that remains, yet it used to be this large, covering this whole area. So you could go ahead and read about it so that you can have a more clear understanding of how mismanagement of water bodies could really lead to water crisis. So, as I said, we're going to have a quick question and answer session, and this is a question that I picked from the past paper. And the question says, explain why plentiful supply of water, especially clean water, are important for people and the economy of a country. This question is very clear. The English is very simple, and always take time to read and understand the question, interpret it before you go ahead answer. So you can see it says explain why plentiful large amount of water, and they go ahead to say especially clean water. So there are two aspects of this question: plentiful supply and then clean water. How is it important for both people and the economy? So we notice that we're going to have a broad range of answers. So point number one is water is a basic need. Without water, people would dehydrate and therefore would not survive. And therefore, water being a basic need, people need it to avoid dehydration and to be able to survive. And that is an importance to people. If you want to continue this point, you could talk about that as people survive, this means going to have enough uh, labor force that could lead to economic development as they engage in different economic activities. Point number two, it is used for domestic purposes such as cleaning, cooking, washing, bathing, and in toilets. Anything that you use water for at home is very important for your daily living, for your survival. Next point is clean water prevents diseases that originate from dirty water. Some of these diseases could be typhoid, cholera, and as people are clean, that means they have good personal hygiene and therefore they do not get sickly. And of course, a healthy population will be more productive and able to work harder for economic growth. So that is a point that relates with the economy. Water can be used for irrigation, which improves yields and increases food supply. So food supply being in plenty has two things. One, it's going to be important for people to survive as they eat a balanced diet, and also having a plentiful our harvest or having our high food production also means that there's going to be food available for sale or for export, and that would lead to economic growth. Number next is water can also be used to generate electricity. For example, HEP. If we have plentiful supply of water in rivers, therefore we can produce hydroelectric power, which is used in homes and in industries to run machines, obviously. And point number next is with plentiful supply of clean water, children and women do not have to waste time collecting water from far distances. We know this is a big problem in LEDCs. People, especially women and children, walk longer distances to look for water from very far distances. And that means if there is enough water supply, women will stay home and maybe engage in other productive work that could bring in money into the economy. And also, children would also have time to spend at school, and therefore they would get educated. Probably in future, they become a very strong workforce. Lastly, people spend less on healthcare when the morbidity is very low. As we said, when people drink clean water, they will not be sickly, and therefore there's going to be less money spent in hospitals for treatment. So that is how you answer this question. Go slow, read the question, interpret every word, and be able to give answers that are relevant. So there is another question. This question is the opposite of the question we just finished, and it says explain how poor water supply may affect the development of the country. This is going to be your assignment. And like I've said, this question is exactly the opposite of one that I've just discussed. So take time, see how you approach it, and you could leave any questions that you may have in the comment section. And please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share the videos so that you could help a friend to prepare for their IGCSE exams. Now, this brings us to the end of lesson 2. I will catch you in lesson 3, and I wish you the best.